An IPO from what some call China's answer to Nvidia skyrocketing after its debut, and another Beijing-based AI chip maker reportedly planning to triple its production.
A Chinese chip company just went public, and its stock price went wild. On day one, GPU maker More Threads surged over 400%.
It was founded by former Nvidia employees now trying to take on the chip giant itself.
That spike isn't just market hype. It's a signal about where China's AI strategy is headed. In this video, we'll unpack who More Threads is and why its IPO matters for the global AI race. Who is More Threads? More Threads came onto the scene with confidence. The company did not try to hide its ambition, and honestly, it did not need to. It was founded by James Zhang in 2020. He spent 14 years at Nvidia and even served as Nvidia's general manager in China. So when he stepped out to build a new GPU company, people paid attention. His goal was simple. He wanted China to have its own powerful graphics chips for gaming, artificial intelligence, and everyday computing needs. From the very beginning, More Threads tried to build a full ecosystem instead of only focusing on hardware. One of its biggest moves was creating its own CUDA-compatible platform called Musa. This meant Chinese developers could run AI and graphics workloads on local chips without relying on American technology. In a country where tech independence has become a priority, this was a major selling point. The company also moved at a surprising speed. In only 4 years, More Threads pushed out 4 GPU generations. Their names were Sudi, Chunxiao, Kuyuan, and the latest one, Pinghu, which arrived in 2024. Pinghu even claimed the ability to train trillion-parameter models, placing it in the same conversation as OpenAI's GPT or DeepSeek's advanced systems. Whether the real-world performance matches the marketing is another story, yet the ambition is hard to ignore. Financially, the company has been in rapid expansion mode. Revenue jumped from 124 million yuan in 2022 to more than 438 million in 2024. In the first 3 quarters of 2025, it crossed 700 million yuan. The losses grew as well, climbing to more than 1.6 billion yuan, which is typical for a company trying to break into an expensive industry. More Threads surprised many with the crowds it attracted for its Shanghai IPO. Thousands of retail investors subscribed. The company planned to raise over $1 billion. Western media quickly picked up the story and began calling it China's Nvidia, suggesting that Beijing saw More Threads as a path to building homegrown AI hardware. When you look closer at the actual products, the picture becomes more grounded. More Threads offers consumer GPUs like the MTT S50, S80, and S90. These target the same audience that buys Nvidia's GTX and RTX cards. The specs look good on paper. For example, the S80 includes 4096 MUSA cores and support for PCIe Gen 5. In practice, early drivers held it back, and the S80 often performed below older Nvidia cards. The S90 finally showed real improvement and reached performance levels close to the RTX 4060 in some tests. Most of that progress came from better software rather than breakthrough hardware. On the professional side, More Threads introduced the MTTS 4000, a workstation card with 48 gigabytes of memory. It was designed for AI and high-performance computing. It also supported multi-GPU connections through MT-Link, similar to NVIDIA's NVLink. The company even promoted a cluster system called KUAE that could scale up to 1,000 GPUs. For now, More Threads might not be outdoing NVIDIA, but is still growing rapidly in the consumer space. Its data center products are young, limited, and facing tough competition. Yet the company has money, talent, government support, and a massive local market. Whether it becomes a true NVIDIA rival in the future remains to be seen, but its rise has already changed the GPU landscape inside China. And that momentum set the stage for the stunning surge investors would rush toward next. If you like clear breakdowns of how AI, politics, and money intersect, hit subscribe and tap the like button. It tells the algorithm this is worth recommending and helps the channel grow. Why did the IPO jump so much? For years, China's AI boom ran on Nvidia. If a company wanted to train a serious model, it went shopping for A100s, H100s, or the cut-down H20 chips that were still allowed into the country. Then export controls from Washington tightened, Beijing pushed back, and suddenly both sides were squeezing the pipe at the same time. Out of that pressure came a new obsession in China: build an AI stack that is independent and controllable, from chips all the way up to large language models. You can think of this stack as 3 simple layers. At the bottom are the chips, the physical engines that do all the math. In the middle are the software tools and frameworks that tell those chips what to do. At the top sit the models and apps, like chatbots and AI co-pilots, that regular people actually touch. China's goal is not to dabble at one level. It wants local options at every layer, so no foreign government can choke the system with one policy change. The fight started at the chip layer. The United States moved first, blocking exports of high-end GPUs and the tools needed to make them. Nvidia's A100 and H100 were hit. Then even the watered-down China-only parts like 800, H800 and H20 came under tight rules. In 2025, the H20 was pushed behind a licensing wall that is almost impossible to clear. At the same time, China answered from its side. Regulators told giants like Alibaba and ByteDance to stop buying Nvidia's new RTX Pro 6000D for data centers, even though those firms had already lined up big orders. On top of that, Beijing went even further for state-funded cloud projects. New guidance says that foreign AI chips cannot be used in data centers that rely on public money, not even in mixed setups. If a project is still in the planning phase and includes Nvidia or AMD, the chips have to be removed from the design. That instantly turned domestic players like Huawei, Cambricon, and newer names such as More Threads from interesting alternatives into strategic suppliers. This shift is not only about pride, it is about risk. From Beijing's view, you cannot build your future on hardware that Washington can shut off at any moment. So the state has poured hundreds of billions of yuan into its own chip ecosystem. Big national funds and local governments support foundries like seismic and memory makers like YMTC, while Huawei coordinates a national team across the supply chain. SMIC can now produce 7-nanometer chips, but capacity is limited, and every major Chinese chip designer is fighting for wafer space and access to high-bandwidth memory. Even when the hardware looks good on paper, there is another problem. Nvidia does not just sell chips, it sells an ecosystem built around CUDA, its programming platform. Most of today's AI code is written with CUDA in mind, so moving that code to a different vendor is painful and expensive. Chinese companies are attacking this in 2 ways. Some, including More Threads, try to be CUDA compatible so developers can reuse existing work. Others, like Huawei, are trying to build their own full alternative with platforms such as CAN. That sounds neat in theory, but in practice the tools are still rough. Crashes, missing features, and constant changes slow down adoption. Higher up the stack, things look better for China. Frameworks such as PyTorch and TensorFlow are open source and still available, so Chinese engineers use them heavily and also contribute patches that support local chips. At the same time, companies like Baidu and Huawei have put out their own frameworks for domestic users. They see these tools as the language of AI development inside China, even if global options still dominate day-to-day coding. Merix.org. At the very top, in the world of large language models, the story is even more competitive. Chinese tech firms, labs, and startups have rushed into the race. DeepSeek is the standout name here, with models that run well on local hardware and have pushed China much closer to the global frontier. Chinese cloud providers and chip makers have raced to support DeepSeek on their own platforms, and you now see models running on Huawei Ascend, Cambricon, and even More Threads accelerators. The hardware might not match Nvidia's best gear, but clever engineering and long training runs help close part of the gap. All of this feeds into a bigger idea you will hear a lot: sovereign AI or self-sovereign AI. The point is not to cut the rest of the world out completely. The point is to make sure that no foreign company or government can flip a switch and bring your AI sector to a halt. China's new AI plans talk very openly about building an ecosystem that can train and deploy powerful models without any foreign choke points. That means local data centers, local frameworks, and, most importantly, local chips. This is where More Threads walks into the spotlight. When Nvidia's share of the Chinese AI market crashed from almost total dominance to almost zero, that did not remove the demand. It simply created a huge vacuum. Beijing has started to ban foreign AI chips from state-backed projects and to push cloud providers toward domestic solutions. In that environment, any workable Chinese GPU suddenly looks a lot more valuable, even if it trails the global leaders. Investors clearly understand that. When more Threads listed in Shanghai, the stock exploded. Shares jumped more than 4 to 5 times on the first day, turning a roughly $1 billion fundraising into one of the hottest debuts of the year. Media quickly repeated the label China's Nvidia, not because the performance is equal, but because the company sits in the right place at the right time. It designs GPUs, it targets AI, and it is fully tied to the story of Chinese tech self-reliance. Under the hood, More Threads is doing exactly what Beijing wants to see. It runs its own Musa architecture that can work with common AI and graphics workloads, and it offers CUDA-style compatibility so Chinese developers can port existing code with less pain. Its workstation and data center cards, such as the MTTS 4000, are now being pitched as building blocks for domestic AI clusters. The company has also moved fast to support headline local models like DeepSeek so that Chinese firms can say they are running Chinese models on Chinese chips. Right now, More Threads is still a second-tier player inside China. Huawei and Cambricon ship more powerful and more mature AI parts. Nvidia is still ahead globally in raw performance, efficiency, and software polish. Yet that almost misses the point. More Threads does not need to beat Nvidia today to matter. It needs to prove that a domestic GPU house can survive on Chinese capital, Chinese fabs, and Chinese customers, even while sitting on a US entity list. Its blockbuster IPO and its growing role in local AI clusters show that this is already happening. So when you zoom out, China's push away from Nvidia and toward homegrown hardware is not just about one company losing a big market. It is about a full pivot to a parallel AI universe that can run on domestic chips, domestic tools, and domestic models. More Threads is one of the clearest symbols of that pivot. It turns the abstract slogan of independent and controllable AI into something you can actually plug into a server rack. And that is exactly why the Chinese market has piled in behind it. But to understand why that bet feels so urgent, you have to step back to the chip war. The chip war in the background. The chip war did not begin with loud warnings or dramatic threats. It started with small moves from Washington that slowly tightened around China's tech ambitions. By 2020, the United States made its first major strike when it blocked companies around the world from using American technology to make chips for Huawei. That one decision sent a clear message. The US was no longer treating semiconductors as a global business. Chips were now national security assets. 2 years later, the situation escalated. The US rolled out heavy export controls that cut China off from advanced GPUs, chip-making tools, and even software that could help Chinese firms design or build cutting-edge hardware. These rules targeted anything connected to high-performance computing or artificial intelligence. The goal was simple: keep China as far as possible from the most advanced chips in the world. By late 2023, more updates arrived. The US expanded its blacklist, tightened loopholes, and blocked even more categories of machines and components. These tools were vital for shrinking chip sizes and boosting efficiency. Without them, building modern semiconductors becomes slow, expensive, and unreliable. Washington then pushed its allies to join in. Japan and the Netherlands, two countries with powerful chip equipment industries, agreed to restrict what they could ship to China. China experienced the impact almost immediately. Access to key technology became harder. Supply chains slowed down. Companies could not buy the machines needed to make chips below certain sizes. Yet China did not step back. It saw these moves as a direct challenge to its rise and responded with its own push towards self-reliance. Beijing already had a long-term plan to become a technology superpower. The Made in China program laid out goals for chip independence years earlier. Export controls only made those goals feel more urgent. China began pouring money into its semiconductor sector. State funds, local governments, and major tech companies joined the effort. SMIC focused on building more advanced manufacturing lines. YMTC invested in memory. Huawei acted as the coordinator, supporting suppliers and partners across the entire chain. China also tightened rules on foreign companies. Micron faced restrictions. New laws targeted firms seen as security risks. And when the US blocked chips like Nvidia's H20 from entering China, Beijing answered by telling its biggest tech companies to stop buying the same hardware. Suddenly, American GPUs could not enter many Chinese data centers. This forced local firms to get serious about domestic alternatives. China then made another bold move. It restricted exports of critical minerals such as gallium and germanium. These materials are essential for many high-tech products. The message was clear. If the US uses chips as leverage, China can respond through its own strengths in raw materials. Despite the pressure, China's chip output surged. In early 2024, Chinese factories produced record numbers of integrated circuits. Most were older generation chips, yet the volume showed how quickly China can scale once it commits to a goal. The country cannot replace Taiwan's top-tier production in the near future, but it is growing stronger in lower and mid-tier segments that power a huge range of devices. This domestic momentum created space for new companies to rise. Local GPU makers saw their chance. If China could no longer rely on Nvidia, it needed homegrown options for AI, gaming, and data center workloads. That is where More Threads enters the larger story. The same export rules that blocked Nvidia also opened the door for domestic challengers. China needed GPUs for training models, running cloud services, and powering national projects. Import restrictions turned that need into demand. More Threads stepped into that demand with its own chips, its Musa architecture, and a promise to give China a fully local graphics and AI solution. The company grew faster than expected. It targeted gaming first, then shifted toward AI accelerators. It built its own compatibility layers so developers could reuse NVIDIA-style code without rewriting everything. It also began promoting its workstation and data center cards as part of a broader national computing strategy. The more the US tightened export rules, the more Threads positioned itself as a patriotic choice. Investors understood the shift. When More Threads went public, its stock exploded on the first day of trading. It raised billions in funding and instantly became a symbol of China's desire to control its own tech future. At the same time, Huawei, Cambricon, and other domestic companies kept building their own chips, clusters, and tools. This rising wave of local hardware shows how deeply the chip war has changed China's path. So the chip war is no longer about trade. It is a race for control over the future of computing. The US wants to slow China's rise in advanced technology. China wants to become self-sufficient and reduce its exposure to foreign pressure. Every restriction from Washington pushes Beijing deeper into independence. Every new domestic chip brings China closer to that goal. More Threads now sits right in the middle of this shift. It is not just a GPU company, it is a product of the chip war itself, built at a moment when China decided it must rely on its own talent and its own factories. This rising ecosystem shows that the chip war has reshaped the industry on both sides. And as China keeps growing its local GPU capabilities, companies like More Threads will remain at the center of its long-term strategy to stand on its own. And that shift raises the next question. How does More Threads measure up against Nvidia? Can More Threads really compete with Nvidia? When people first hear the phrase, China's Nvidia, it sounds bold. Nvidia sits at the top of the GPU world with performance, software, and market share that no one has matched. More Threads is young, still finding its footing and far behind in global benchmarks. Yet inside China, the question becomes more interesting. More Threads does not need to beat Nvidia everywhere. It only needs to be strong enough to serve a massive domestic market that is now cut off from the best American chips. That changes the entire picture. If we start with raw performance, More Threads is nowhere near Nvidia's level. Nvidia's chips define the standard for both gaming and artificial intelligence workloads. They deliver incredible speed, world-class efficiency, and deep optimization across many generations. More Threads is still trying to reach basic consistency. Its early flagship card, the MTTS-80, looked promising on paper with thousands of cores, modern memory, and PCIe 5.0 support. But once gamers tested it, the results were rough. it struggled to keep up with older Nvidia cards that use far less power. Reviews from major tech outlets pointed out that the S80 performed closer to decade-old hardware than anything modern. The gap is even wider on the AI side. More Threads S4000 data center GPU aims to handle training and inference. Yet Nvidia has already moved through multiple generations with Hopper and Blackwell architecture. Even Nvidia's older H100 still outperforms More Threads' newer designs in most real-world scenarios. This lines up with global estimates that Chinese AI chips trail American designs by about 1 to 2 years. That may not sound like much, but in the GPU world, it represents a huge performance gulf. Then there is software. Nvidia's secret weapon has always been CUDA. Developers rely on it for model training, optimization, and large-scale computing. It comes with a giant library ecosystem and more than a decade of improvements. Companies that use CUDA build their entire workflow around it. Switching away can be painful and expensive. More Threads knows this. That is why it created Musa, its own software environment that tries to mimic a CUDA-like experience. It includes compilers, libraries, and a tool that translates CUDA code into something the Musa architecture can understand. This strategy makes sense, but it faces a big challenge. CUDA is global and mature. Musa is young and mostly used inside China. Tools are still being refined, bugs show up, and developers must adapt to a new environment without the comfort of worldwide community support. That slows down adoption and limits how quickly More Threads can match Nvidia's ecosystem strength. If the story ended here, More Threads would not be a real competitor. But the story does not end here, because China's market is not a normal market anymore. Export controls have changed the rules. Nvidia cannot freely sell its most advanced chips to China. Certain models, including the Blackwell line, are blocked from entering the country. Even special China-only variants like the A20 face restrictions. Local regulators have also instructed state-funded cloud and data center operators to stop buying foreign AI chips. That one policy alone created a massive gap that domestic players must fill. This is where More Threads becomes relevant. China's AI demand is exploding. Every region is investing in computing centers. Cities want their own AI clusters. Companies need hardware for training and inference. And Beijing wants all of this to run on local technology as much as possible. To encourage this, the government offers subsidies, cheaper energy, and tax benefits for data centers that adopt domestic chips. When combined with policy pressure, these incentives push buyers toward More Threads, Huawei, Cambricon, and other Chinese firms. In that environment, More Threads does not need to match Nvidia. It only needs to be reliable enough for mid-size workloads. Tasks like running industry-specific models, supporting government services, handling city surveillance feeds, powering recommendation systems, and managing local AI applications do not always require the absolute peak of global performance. They require stability, availability, and cost efficiency. That is where a good enough domestic GPU becomes valuable. More Threads also benefits from being manufactured at SMEC instead of TSMC. Working on older process nodes keeps it safe from certain sanctions. The chips are less advanced, but they are available. For many Chinese customers, availability has become more important than perfection. They cannot rely on Nvidia, so they accept a local option that fits within political and economic guidelines. Now, this does not mean More Threads has a clear path. It faces heavy competition from other Chinese chip makers. Huawei's Ascend GPUs are improving fast and already power some high-profile clusters. Manufacturing limits at SMIC also cap how much More Threads can improve year over year. And many top Chinese AI labs still depend on old stockpiles of Nvidia hardware for their biggest training runs. Yet the overall trend still favors More Threads inside China. The chip war created an unusual dynamic. Nvidia is unmatched globally, but locked out of China's most important AI sectors. More Threads is weaker on performance, but positioned where demand is growing and policy support is strong. In a fair global market, More Threads would struggle. Inside a protected domestic ecosystem shaped by national strategy and export restrictions, it has room to grow. So can More Threads compete with Nvidia in the global sense? Not today and not soon. But can it compete inside China, where the market rewards availability, alignment, and continuous improvement? Yes, in fact, it may become one of the main GPU suppliers in China, even while trailing Nvidia in pure technology. In the chip war era, good enough can still win a very large market, and this unusual balance sets up a much bigger shift that could reshape global AI. Why this matters for AI's future? China's push to build its own AI chips is not just an economic strategy. It could reshape how the entire world develops and uses artificial intelligence. Right now, the global AI community sits on a shared foundation built on Nvidia hardware and CUDA software. Because so many researchers rely on the same GPUs and tools, ideas move easily across borders. A technique published in California can be tested in Beijing without major changes. That kind of compatibility keeps global research fast and collaborative. But that balance only holds as long as everyone uses similar hardware. China is moving in a different direction. Companies like More Threads, Huawei, Byron, and others are working to replace Nvidia with domestic GPUs in their own software stacks. If these platforms mature, China will train and deploy AI on systems that do not rely on CUDA at all. At the same time, the West will continue building on Nvidia and AMD. Over time, the habits, tools, and optimization techniques of each region will drift apart. This matters because AI progress depends heavily on ease of replication. When hardware ecosystems split, so does the flow of ideas. A Chinese model tuned for domestic chips may not reproduce cleanly on Western systems. A Western training strategy may not work on China's hardware without major adjustments. Even consumer apps could diverge. Chinese AI assistants and enterprise tools would be shaped by China's hardware and cloud platforms, while Western tools would evolve around Nvidia's environment. If China fully decouples from the US-led hardware ecosystem, the impact will reach far beyond chips. It will influence how AI research is shared, how companies build products, and how people experience AI in daily life. The world could end up with two very different AI universes. And that's a wrap. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so drop a comment and tell us where you think this chip battle is heading. Will China's ecosystem stand on its own? If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss what's coming next.